The gala was unlike any other event anyone had ever seen. It wasn't just because it took place on a space station orbiting Earth. It was the kind of party where people talked about wealth, power, and secrets in hushed tones. Elysium Prime. The name of the space station sparkled like a jewel itself against the vast darkness of space. Inside, everything gleamed under soft, golden lighting. Crystal chandeliers floated gently above the heads of elegantly dressed men and women, their laughter filling the air as they sipped expensive drinks. Chuck Norris stood near one of the large observation windows, looking out at the curve of the blue planet below. He didn't say much, but his presence always seemed to command attention. Tonight he wore a simple black suit that fit him perfectly. Beside him was his wife, Linda. She looked stunning in a long, flowing gown that shimmered faintly in the light. Her hair was tied back neatly, and she carried herself with quiet confidence. People around them occasionally glanced their way, whispering about how iconic Chuck still was after all these years. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Linda said softly, nodding toward the centerpiece of the room, a glass display case holding something extraordinary. Inside the case rested the celestial spark, a diamond necklace worth $12 million. Its brilliance caught every beam of light, scattering rainbows across the floor. It looked almost magical, like something too precious to exist in real. "Haley." Chuck nodded slowly, his sharp eyes scanning the room. "It's impressive," he admitted, "but I think I'd rather spend my money on helping people than buying rocks." Linda chuckled lightly. "You never change, do you?" He smiled. Though there was a seriousness behind his expression, Chuck had seen enough of the world and beyond to know what truly mattered. Still, even he couldn't deny that the necklace was remarkable. As they stood there admiring it, others joined them, drawn by curiosity or greed. Some were clearly wealthy collectors eager to get closer to such an extravagant piece of jewelry. Others seemed more interested in being seen near something so valuable. Among the attendees was Agent Ryan Carter, a tall man with short brown hair and a stern face. He worked for Galactic Security, the organization responsible for keeping events like this safe. His sharp eyes scanned the crowd constantly, missing nothing. When he noticed Chuck and Linda lingering by the display, he moved closer, pretending to check the security measures around the necklace. "Mr. Norris," Ryan greeted, politely though his tone lacked warmth. "Mrs. Norris, enjoying the evening?" "We are," Linda replied warmly. "This is quite the gathering." Ryan nodded stiffly. "Indeed. Though we've had some concerns about security tonight, this necklace has attracted a lot of attention." Chuck raised an eyebrow. "Anything specific you're worried about?" Ryan hesitated before answering. "Nothing concrete, just rumors. These things tend to bring out the worst in certain individuals." Before Chuck could respond, Linda excused herself to speak with someone else across the room. Chuck watched her go, feeling proud of how effortlessly she navigated social situations. Once she was gone, Ryan leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. "You understand why we're cautious," Ryan continued. "People like you, celebrities, can sometimes attract trouble without realizing it." Chuck gave him a hard look. "Are you suggesting my wife might cause problems?" "No offense intended," Ryan said quickly, raising his hands defensively. "I'm just saying accidents happen, and when they do, fingers start pointing." Chuck didn't reply immediately. Instead, he turned his gaze back to the necklace. Something about Ryan's words felt off, though he couldn't put his finger on it. Before he could dwell on it further, the sound of breaking glass shattered the calm atmosphere. Everyone froze. For a split second, no one moved. Then chaos erupted. The protective case surrounding the celestial spark lay shattered on the floor, shards of glass glittering like fallen stars. The necklace was gone. Gasps echoed through the room as panic spread among the guests. Security personnel rushed forward, shouting orders into their comms devices. Red warning lights flashed overhead, bathing the room in an ominous glow. "What happened?" someone cried. "It's been stolen," another voice yelled. Amid the confusion, Chuck instinctively scanned the area. His military training kicked in, sharpening his focus. He spotted Linda standing nearby, looking shocked and confused. Her hands were empty, but several people were already pointing at her, accusing her angrily. "She was standing right next to it," a woman exclaimed. "That's right. I saw her," a man chimed in. Linda shook her head desperately. "No, I didn't take it, I swear." But the accusations kept coming. Within moments, she was surrounded by angry faces demanding answers. Chuck pushed his way through the crowd, his jaw tightening with anger. No one touched his wife. Not physically, not verbally, not if he had anything to say about it. "Back off," he growled, his deep voice cutting through the noise like thunder. The crowd hesitated, intimidated by the legendary figure now standing protectively beside Linda. Agent Ryan appeared again, this time flanked by 2 armed guards. "Mrs. Norris," he said firmly, "we need to ask you a few questions." "I told you I didn't steal anything," Linda insisted, her voice trembling with frustration. Ryan ignored her protests, gesturing for the guards to escort her away. Chuck stepped between them, his imposing frame blocking their path. "If you want to talk to her," he said coldly, "you'll have to go through me first." The tension in the room was palpable. Ryan stared at Chuck for a long moment, then sighed. "This isn't personal, Mr. Norris, but evidence suggests your wife may have been involved." Chuck clenched his fists, resisting the urge to lash out. He knew violence wouldn't solve anything here, not yet anyway. Instead, he locked eyes with Ryan, his voice low and dangerous. "If you accuse her again without proof, you'll regret it." For a brief moment, Ryan looked uncertain. But duty won over fear, and he motioned for the guards to proceed. Reluctantly, Chuck allowed them to lead Linda away, promising silently that he would fix this mess no matter what it took. As the crowd dispersed, murmuring about the scandal, Chuck remained rooted to the spot. His mind raced with possibilities. Someone had framed Linda, that much was obvious. But who, and why? One thing was certain. Whoever was responsible had made a grave mistake. Because now, they weren't just dealing with anyone. They were dealing with Chuck Norris. After the gala turned into chaos, Chuck knew he couldn't sit around waiting for someone else to clear Linda's name. If there was one thing he hated more than injustice, it was sitting idle while others suffered. So, while Linda was taken away for questioning, Chuck decided to take matters into his own hands. He needed answers, and he wasn't about to let anyone stand in his way. The first step was figuring out who could have stolen the necklace, or at least who might know something about it. Chuck remembered hearing whispers during the gala about a place where stolen goods often ended up, an underground market on Mars. It was risky, but if anyone had information about the celestial spark, they'd be there. Chuck wasted no time booking passage on the next shuttle heading to Mars. During the journey, he thought about everything that had happened so far. The accusations against Linda felt wrong, not just because he trusted her completely, but because she wasn't the type to do something like this. Someone wanted her framed, and Chuck intended to find out why. When he arrived on Mars, the air smelled metallic and stale, reminding him of old factories back on Earth. The underground market was located deep within the red planet's rocky terrain, hidden from prying eyes. As Chuck made his way through narrow tunnels carved into the rock, the noise grew louder. Voices shouting over each other, machinery humming, and music blaring from hidden speakers. Neon lights flickered above, casting strange shadows on the walls. The market itself was a maze of stalls and tents crowded with people buying and selling all kinds of questionable items. Weapons, tech gadgets, rare artifacts. It seemed like anything could be found here if you were willing to pay the price. Chuck moved carefully, keeping an eye out for anyone who looked suspicious or knowledgeable. He didn't have to search. Long before someone caught his attention, near a stall piled high with glittering trinkets stood a young woman with short dark hair and sharp green eyes. She wore a patched-up flight suit and carried herself with confidence despite the rough surroundings. Something about her demeanor told Chuck she wasn't just another shopper. She belonged here. When their eyes met, she raised an eyebrow but didn't look away. "You lost?" she asked, her tone casual but guarded. "No," Chuck replied, stepping closer. "I'm looking for answers," she smirked. "Answers cost money around here. What kind are you after?" "I need to know about a necklace, a diamond necklace called the Celestial Spark, $12 million worth. Her smirk faded, slightly replaced by a flicker of interest. That's quite the prize. Why would someone like you care about that? It belongs to my wife, Chuck said firmly, and someone stole it to frame her. The woman studied him for a moment, then nodded toward a quieter corner of the market. Follow me. They stepped away from the noisy crowd, finding a spot near a crumbling wall covered in graffiti. Up close, Chuck noticed the woman had a scar running along her jawline, hinting at a tough past. Despite her rugged appearance, there was intelligence in her gaze. Name's Mia Torres, she said, extending a hand. Smuggler by trade, occasional fixer when the credits are right. Chuck Norris, he replied, shaking her hand. What do you know about the necklace? Mia leaned back against the wall, crossing her arms. Word travels fast in places like this. A few hours ago, I heard rumors about the celestial spark showing up here. But it's not just jewelry. It's got tech embedded in it. Microchips, capable of hacking into any system in the galaxy. Whoever took it isn't doing it for the diamonds. Chuck frowned. Hacking? That sounds like trouble. You don't know the half of it, Mia said grimly. Novatech, the company that insured the necklace, is behind some shady stuff. They've been experimenting with AI hybrids, trying to create soldiers controlled by machines. If they get their hands on that tech again, it'll mean bad news for everyone. Chuck's fists clenched involuntarily. So they're using this theft as a cover? Could be, Mia admitted. But here's the kicker. Novatech doesn't want the thief caught. They want the necklace back. No questions asked. Which means whoever has it is probably already working for them. Before Chuck could respond, a loud crash echoed through the market. People screamed and scattered as a group of armored figures stormed in, weapons drawn. Their uniforms bore the Novatech logo, a stylized N encircled by stars. Enforcers. They found us, Mia muttered, grabbing Chuck's arm. Come on. Without hesitation, she pulled him into a nearby alleyway, weaving through crates and debris. Behind them, the enforcers shouted orders, their boots pounding against the ground. Chuck followed Mia's lead, trusting her knowledge of the area. They ducked under low-hanging pipes and slipped through hidden passages until they reached a small door concealed behind a stack of barrels. In here, Mia hissed, pushing the door open. Inside was a tiny storage room filled with spare parts and tools. Chuck squeezed in after her, closing the door just as the sound of footsteps passed by outside. For a moment, neither of them spoke, listening intently for any sign of pursuit. Thanks, Chuck said, finally breaking the silence. You saved my neck. Mia shrugged, though her face remained tense. Don't thank me yet. Those guys aren't going to stop until they find what they're looking for, and now they know you're involved. Chuck nodded grimly. Then we'll make sure they don't succeed. Mia hesitated, then sighed. Look, I'm not usually the hero type, but if Novatech gets away with this, it'll affect everyone. I'll help you for a price. How much? Chuck asked bluntly. Not money, she said. Information. You keep me in the loop and I'll do what I can. Deal, Chuck agreed without hesitation. Over the next hour, Mia shared everything she knew about Novatech's operations and the likely location of the necklace. According to her sources, it had been smuggled off Mars shortly after the theft and was now headed toward a secret facility on Earth. The enforcers chasing them were likely part of a larger team tasked with retrieving it quietly. As they prepared to leave the storage room, Mia handed Chuck a small device. Take this, it's a tracer. If you run into trouble, press the button and I'll come find you. Chuck accepted the gadget, tucking it into his pocket. Stay safe, Mia. You too, she replied, giving him a quick nod before disappearing into the shadows. With renewed determination, Chuck set out to track down the real culprits and prove once and for all that Linda was innocent. Little did he know, the road ahead would only grow more dangerous. Chuck Norris returned to Earth with a clear plan in mind. He knew that tracking down the thief who stole the celestial spark was his best chance to clear Linda's name. But instead of chasing leads blindly, he decided to use his reputation and his wallet to draw the culprit out into the open. Word spread quickly through the criminal underworld. Chuck Norris was offering $12 million in cash for the return of the stolen necklace. It didn't take long for someone to bite. The AEA meeting was set up in an old abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of a sprawling city. The place smelled of rust and decay, its walls covered in peeling paint and graffiti. Faint sunlight filtered through broken windows, casting eerie patterns on the dusty floor. Chuck arrived alone, carrying a heavy black briefcase filled with unmarked bills. He didn't need backup. If things went sideways, he could handle himself. Standing in the middle of the empty space, Chuck waited patiently. His sharp eyes scanned the shadows, ready for anything. After a few minutes, a figure emerged from the darkness. It was Alex Monroe, a wiry man with slicked back hair and a smirk that made Chuck's fists itch. He carried the celestial spark, loosely in one hand, its diamonds catching the faint light and sparkling like fireflies. Behind Alex stood two hulking men, their faces obscured by masks. They looked like hired muscle, the kind who didn't ask questions as long as they got paid. Chuck ignored them, focusing on Alex instead. "You've got guts showing up here," Alex said, his voice dripping with mockery. "I heard stories about you, Chuck. Thought you'd be taller." Chuck didn't rise to the bait. Instead, he gestured toward the briefcase at his feet. $12 million. All yours if you give me the necklace." Alex chuckled, tossing the necklace casually from one hand to the other. "You really think it's that simple? I swipe this shiny thing, show up, and walk away rich? Nah, buddy. That's not how it works." Chuck's jaw tightened. "What do you want?" "I want assurances," Alex replied smoothly. "How do I know you're not setting me up? Maybe you'll call your buddies once I hand over the goods." "I work alone," Chuck said flatly, "and I always keep my word." For a moment, Alex studied him, weighing whether or not to believe him. Finally, he shrugged. "Fine, but we do it my way. You count out half the money first, then I'll toss you the necklace." "No deal," Chuck shot back immediately. "Full payment after delivery, not a second sooner." Alex's smile faltered, replaced by irritation. "You're playing hardball, huh? Big mistake." Before Chuck could respond, Alex nodded to his henchmen. In an instant, the two brutes lunged forward, pulling out stun batons and closing in on Chuck. Without hesitation, Chuck sprang into action. He sidestepped the first attacker, grabbing the man's wrist and twisting it until the baton clattered to the ground. A swift elbow strike sent the thug stumbling backward, clutching his face. The second henchman swung wildly, but Chuck ducked under the blow, delivering a powerful kick to the man's knee. There was a sickening crack, and the brute collapsed with a groan. Alex watched the fight unfold with wide eyes, clearly unprepared for Chuck's speed and skill. When the last henchman hit the ground, Alex backed away nervously, clutching the necklace tightly. Okay, Alex stammered. "You win, just don't hurt me." Chuck advanced slowly, stopping just a few feet away. "Hand it over." With trembling hands, Alex tossed the necklace toward Chuck. As soon as it landed in his grasp, Chuck opened the briefcase and slid it across the floor. Alex scrambled to grab it, barely glancing inside before bolting toward the exit. But Chuck wasn't done yet. He moved faster than Alex expected, intercepting him before he could escape. Grabbing the smaller man by the collar, Chuck slammed him against the wall, pinning him there effortlessly. "Who sent you?" Chuck demanded, his voice low and dangerous. I don't know," Alex stammered, sweat pouring down his face. "Some guy contacted me online, said he'd pay triple what you offered." "What did he look like?" Chuck pressed. "I never met him," Alex cried. "Everything was done through encrypted messages. Please let me go." Chuck stared at him for a long moment, searching for any sign of deception. Satisfied that Alex was telling the truth, at least as far as he knew, he released him with a shove. "Get out of here," Chuck growled. "And if I ever see you again, you won't be so lucky." Alex didn't need to be told twice. He grabbed the briefcase and fled, disappearing into the shadows. Once he was gone, Chuck examined the necklace closely. It was even more beautiful. Up close, its diamonds glittering like tiny stars. But Chuck wasn't interested in its value. He needed answers. As he left the warehouse, Chuck activated the tracer device Mia had given him earlier. If Novatech was still tracking the necklace, they'd come running soon enough. And when they did, Chuck would be ready. Back at Novatech headquarters, Linda and Mia were in serious trouble. After being captured during their infiltration attempt, they were taken to a high-security detention facility deep within the building. The room was cold and sterile, with metal walls and harsh fluorescent lighting. Linda sat on a hard bench, her arms crossed tightly over her chest while Mia paced back and forth, muttering under her breath. "This isn't good," Mia said, glancing at the locked door. "Novatech doesn't mess around if they figure out why we're really here." "They won't," Linda interrupted firmly. "We haven't told them anything." Mia stopped pacing and turned to face her. "That's exactly the problem. They'll keep us locked up until we talk, or worse." Linda sighed, leaning back against the wall. "Then we'll have to find another way out." As if on cue, the door slid open, revealing Agent Ryan Carter, flanked by 2 armed guards. He stepped inside, his expression unreadable. "Well, well," Ryan said, his tone mocking. "Looks like we have some unexpected guests." "What do you want from us?" Linda demanded, standing up to face him. Ryan ignored her question, focusing instead on Mia. "You've been causing trouble for us for a while now, Ms. Torres. Stealing data, sabotaging projects, it ends today." Mia crossed her arms defiantly. "You should have stuck to legitimate business, Ryan. Then maybe none of this would have happened." Ryan's lips curled into a sneer. "Legitimate? We're shaping the future here. People like you just get in the way." Before anyone could say more, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Red lights flashed overhead, bathing the room in an ominous glow. Ryan frowned, pulling out a communicator. "What's going on?" He barked into the device. "There's been a breach in Sector 7, a panicked voice replied. "Intruder detected." Ryan's eyes widened slightly, but he quickly masked his surprise. Turning back to Linda and Mia, he signaled for the guards to secure them further. "Stay put," he ordered. "This isn't over." As soon as he left, Mia grinned triumphantly. "Told you Chuck wouldn't let us down." Sure enough, moments later, the sound of explosions echoed through the halls. Gunfire erupted outside, followed by shouts of confusion. The guards stationed at the door hesitated, unsure whether to stay or investigate. Seizing the opportunity, Linda grabbed a nearby chair and hurled it at the door's control panel. Sparks flew as the mechanism short-circuited, causing the door to slide open. Without wasting a second, she and Mia dashed into the chaos beyond. Through the smoke and noise, they spotted Chuck fighting his way toward them. He moved like a force of nature, taking down enemies with precision and efficiency. When he finally reached them, relief washed over his face. "Took you long enough," Linda teased, though her voice trembled with emotion. Chuck pulled her into a quick hug. "Let's get out of here." Together, the trio fought their way through the collapsing facility, narrowly avoiding traps and pursuing enforcers. By the time they reached the exit, the entire building was engulfed in flames. Outside, a hovercraft waited, piloted by none other than Mia. "Hop in," she called, revving the engines. As they soared away from the burning wreckage, Chuck glanced at the celestial spark in his hand. It was proof of Novatech's corruption and the key to exposing their crimes to the world. But for now, all that mattered was that they were safe. For the first time in days, Chuck allowed himself a small smile. The battle wasn't over yet, but they'd won this round. The hovercraft raced through the night sky, its engines roaring as it sped away from Novatech's burning facility. Inside, Chuck, Linda, and Mia sat quietly, each lost in their own thoughts. They had escaped, for now, but they all knew the fight was far from over. Novatech wouldn't stop until they recovered the celestial spark or eliminated anyone who stood in their way. Chuck held the necklace firmly in his grasp, studying it closely. It was more than just an expensive piece of jewelry. It was a weapon disguised as art. The embedded microchips could hack into any system, giving whoever controlled it unimaginable power. That kind of technology couldn't fall into the wrong hands, not again. "We need to destroy it," Chuck said, finally breaking the silence. Mia turned to look at him, her expression skeptical. "You sure about that?" Once this thing is gone, we lose our leverage against Novatech. And if we keep it, Chuck countered, they'll never stop hunting us. Besides, do you really think letting something like this exist is a good idea? Linda nodded in agreement. He's right. If we don't destroy it, someone else will use it for harm. Mia sighed, running a hand through her short hair. Fine, but we can't just smash it here. Those chips are designed to survive extreme conditions. We'll need specialized equipment and a safe place to do it. Chuck thought for a moment before speaking. There's an old military bunker I know about. It's isolated, secure, and has everything we might need. Sounds like a plan, Mia said reluctantly. But getting there won't be easy. Novatech will have every checkpoint and scanner looking for us. We'll manage, Chuck replied. Confidently, we always do. The journey to the bunker wasn't without challenges. Novatech had already mobilized its forces, deploying drones and patrols across major cities and transportation hubs. Every roadblock and security checkpoint became a potential threat. But Chuck's determination and Mia's resourcefulness kept them one step ahead. They traveled mostly under cover of darkness, avoiding populated areas whenever possible. At one point, they were forced to abandon the hovercraft after spotting a Novatech patrol nearby. From there, they continued on foot, moving cautiously through dense forests and rocky terrain. Despite the danger, Linda remained calm, trusting Chuck completely. By the time they reached the bunker, exhaustion weighed heavily on all of them. But there was no time to rest. The sooner they destroyed the necklace, the safer they'd be. The bunker was exactly as Chuck remembered it, dimly lit corridors lined with rusting metal walls, leading to a central chamber filled with outdated but functional equipment. Dust covered nearly every surface, and the air smelled faintly of mildew. Still, it was perfect for their needs. Mia immediately got to work setting up the tools required to dismantle the necklace. She connected wires and calibrated machines, her movements quick and precise. Meanwhile, Chuck kept watch, standing near the entrance with his fists clenched, ready for anything. This is going to take some time, Mia warned, glancing at the others. And it's not going to be quiet. When those chips go, they'll trigger alarms everywhere. Then we make sure we're long gone before that happens, Chuck said firmly. As Mia worked, Linda approached Chuck, placing a gentle hand on his arm. Thank you, she said softly, for everything. Chuck gave her a small smile. I told you I'd move heaven and earth for you. Their moment was interrupted by the sound of distant engines. Both turned toward the entrance, where headlights pierced the darkness outside. A convoy of Novatech vehicles was approaching. Fast, they found us, Chuck muttered, stepping forward. Stay here. Protect Mia. Before Linda could protest, Chuck disappeared into the shadows, heading straight for the incoming threat. He moved silently, his years of training making him nearly invisible in the dark. As the first group of enforcers exited their vehicles, Chuck struck. He moved like a storm, taking down enemies with brutal efficiency. His punches shattered visors, and his kicks sent armored bodies flying. Despite being outnumbered, Chuck fought with unmatched skill and ferocity. Each blow landed with precision, leaving his opponent stunned or unconscious. Inside the bunker, Mia and Linda heard the sounds of battle echo through the corridors. Linda wanted to help, but she knew staying with Mia was the best way to ensure the necklace was destroyed. Together they worked faster, sweat dripping down their faces as tension mounted. Finally, Mia let out a triumphant shout. Got it, just a few more seconds. Outside, Chuck continued to hold off wave after wave of attackers. His body ached, and his breath came in ragged gasps, but he refused to give up. He spotted Agent Ryan Carter among the chaos, directing the assault with cold precision. You don't have to do this, Ryan yelled, trying to reason with him. Hand over the necklace and we'll let you walk away. Chuck responded with a fierce glare. You picked the wrong people to mess with. With a roar, he charged forward, closing the distance between himself and Ryan. The two clashed violently, exchanging blows that echoed through the night. Ryan fought well, but he was no match for Chuck's raw strength and experience. After a final devastating punch, Ryan collapsed to the ground, defeated. Back in the bunker, Mia pressed the final button. The machine hummed loudly, sparks flying as the celestial spark began to disintegrate. Alarms blared throughout the facility, signaling the impending destruction. "It's done," Mia shouted. "Let's go." Chuck rejoined them moments later, bloodied but unbroken. Without hesitation, the trio fled the bunker, racing toward safety as explosions erupted behind them. The ground shook beneath their feet, and flames lit up the sky. When they finally stopped to catch their breath, miles away from the wreckage, Chuck looked back at the inferno swallowing the bunker. For the first time in days, he allowed himself to relax slightly. "It's over," he said quietly. "Novatech won't hurt anyone with that thing anymore." Linda wrapped her arms around him, tears of relief streaming down her face. "We did it." Mia smiled faintly, leaning against a tree. "Yeah. Now let's hope the galaxy learns a lesson about messing with Chuck Norris." The destruction of the celestial spark marked a turning point, but it wasn't the end of the story. Novatech had suffered a major blow when its prized technology was destroyed, but the corporation wasn't going down without a fight. In retaliation, they launched a smear campaign against Chuck and Linda, accusing them of orchestrating the theft themselves to cover up their involvement with stolen goods. Public opinion swung wildly between outrage and disbelief. Some people sided with Novatech, believing the company's claims that Chuck and Linda were criminals. Others saw through the lies, convinced that Chuck Norris, a man known worldwide for his integrity, would never stoop to such levels. The controversy grew so intense that it caught the attention of interstellar authorities, who demanded an official investigation into the matter. Chuck knew this would happen. He also knew that clearing their names wouldn't be easy, not when facing off against one of the most powerful corporations in the galaxy. But he refused to back down. If anything, the accusations only fueled his determination to expose Novatech's crimes once and for all. With Mia's help, Chuck gathered every piece of evidence they could find about Novatech's illegal activities. They hacked into restricted databases, recovered deleted files, and even managed to retrieve fragments of data from the bunker before it collapsed. What they uncovered was worse than anyone could have imagined. Secret experiments involving human-AI hybrids, unauthorized military contracts, and plans to use mind control technology on entire populations. Armed with this information, Chuck decided to take the fight public. He leaked the evidence to trusted journalists and activists across the galaxy, ensuring that Novatech's secrets couldn't be buried again. Within days, news outlets were buzzing with reports of the corporation's unethical practices. Protesters took to the streets, demanding accountability and justice. But Novatech wasn't finished yet. Using its vast resources, the company filed a lawsuit against Chuck and Linda, dragging them into court under false pretenses. The trial became a media sensation, drawing attention from every corner of the galaxy. Supporters packed the courtroom, eager to see whether the legendary Chuck Norris could prevail against such overwhelming odds. On the day of the trial, Chuck and Linda walked into the tribunal hall hand in hand. Despite the gravity of the situation, they carried themselves with quiet confidence. Chuck wore a simple suit, while Linda opted for an elegant dress that exuded grace under pressure. Together, they faced the panel of judges and the crowd of onlookers without flinching. Agent Ryan Carter served as Novatech's primary witness. His testimony painted a damning picture of Chuck and Linda as master thieves who had conspired to steal the celestial spark for personal gain. As he spoke, holographic displays appeared behind him, showing fabricated evidence designed to discredit the couple. Chuck listened patiently, his sharp eyes watching every move Ryan made. When it was finally his turn to speak, he stood up slowly, commanding the room with his presence. "Ladies and gentlemen," Chuck began, his voice steady and clear, "what you've heard today isn't the truth. It's a desperate attempt by Novatech to protect itself, and its secrets, from being exposed." He turned toward the judges, holding up a data chip containing the evidence they had collected. "This is proof of Novatech's illegal experiments. Experiments that violate human rights and threaten the safety of our society. They tried to frame my wife because she got too close to uncovering the truth. And now, they're trying to silence us As Chuck handed the data chip to the judges, the courtroom erupted into murmurs. Reporters scrambled to capture the moment, sensing that history was unfolding right before their eyes. The judges reviewed the contents of the chip carefully, their expressions growing increasingly troubled as they realized the extent of Novitek's corruption. Ryan tried to argue against the validity of the evidence, claiming it had been tampered with or fabricated. But Chuck anticipated this defense. With Mia's assistance, he had ensured that every file was time-stamped, encrypted, and verified by independent experts. There was no way Novitek could deny its authenticity. The final blow came when Mia herself took the stand. Dressed in her patched-up flight suit, she recounted her experiences working undercover within Novitek's operations. Her testimony provided first-hand accounts of the corporation's atrocities, leaving no room for doubt about their guilt. By the time closing arguments were delivered, the tide had shifted completely. Even those who had initially doubted Chuck and Linda now understood the truth. Novitek was guilty of far greater crimes than anyone had suspected. When the judges announced their verdict, the courtroom fell silent. One by one, they declared Chuck and Linda innocent of all charges, praising their bravery in exposing Novitek's wrongdoing. The corporation was ordered to pay hefty fines, shut down its experimental programs, and submit to ongoing oversight by interstellar authorities. As the gavel struck the desk, signaling the end of the trial, the crowd erupted into cheers. Supporters rushed forward to congratulate Chuck and Linda, thanking them for standing up to injustice. For the first time in weeks, the couple allowed themselves to smile, knowing they had won not just for themselves but for everyone affected by Novitek's greed. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed around them, asking questions and snapping photos. Chuck raised a hand to quiet the chaos, then addressed the crowd directly. "This victory doesn't belong to us. It belongs to everyone who refuses to stay silent in the face of corruption," he said firmly. "We may have stopped Novitek today, but there will always be others like them. Our job is to keep fighting, for what's right, for what's fair, and for a future where people come first." His words resonated deeply, earning applause from the gathered crowd. As cameras flashed and headlines formed, Chuck wrapped an arm around Linda, pulling her close. "We did it," he whispered. "Yes," Linda replied, leaning into him. "Together." Behind them, Mia watched silently, a small smile playing on her lips. She hadn't expected to become part of something so big, but she was proud of how far they'd come. For now, though, she slipped away unnoticed, disappearing into the crowd. Smugglers like her didn't stick around for celebrations. They moved on to the next adventure. As the sun set over the city skyline, casting golden light across the horizon, Chuck and Linda stood together, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. They had proven that even the mightiest forces couldn't break their bond or their commitment to doing what was right. The trial may have ended, but its impact rippled across the galaxy like waves on an endless ocean. Novitek's downfall sent shockwaves through the corporate world, forcing other companies to rethink their practices and priorities. Governments tightened regulations, ensuring that no organization could repeat the same mistakes or crimes that Novitek had committed. For many, it was a turning point, proof that even the most powerful entities weren't above accountability. Chuck and Linda returned home after the whirlwind of media attention and legal battles finally subsided. Their house, nestled in the countryside far from the chaos of cities and space stations, offered them much-needed peace. It wasn't extravagant, just a cozy place surrounded by trees and open skies, but it was theirs. And for now, that was enough. Life slowly began to return to normal, or as close to normal as it could be for someone like Chuck Norris. Every morning, he woke up early, brewed a pot of strong coffee, and watched the sunrise from the porch. Linda joined him most days, bringing fresh pastries or fruit from the kitchen. Together they talked about everything and nothing: the weather, old memories, future plans. There was comfort in these quiet moments, a reminder of what truly mattered. But while their lives were calmer now, the events of the past weeks had left a mark. Chuck couldn't shake the feeling that there would always be more battles to fight. Not necessarily physical ones, but moral and ethical challenges that required courage and conviction. He didn't mind. If anything, he welcomed it. After all, standing up for others was something he'd been doing his entire life. One day, as they sat together watching the sunset, Linda turned to him with a thoughtful expression. "Do you ever wonder what happens next? What we'll face tomorrow?" Chuck smiled faintly, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "I don't spend too much time wondering. Whatever comes our way, we'll handle it. We always do." Linda nodded, leaning her head against his shoulder. "You're right. Still, I can't help but feel grateful. For us, for this moment, for everything." "Me too," Chuck replied softly. "We've earned it." Their newfound tranquility wasn't without interruptions, though. Reporters still occasionally showed up at their doorstep, hoping for exclusive interviews or inside stories. Fans sent letters and gifts, thanking them for exposing Novatech's corruption. Some even traveled great distances just to catch a glimpse of the legendary couple. Chuck handled it all with patience and humility, signing autographs and posing for photos when asked. But he made it clear that his focus remained on protecting those who couldn't protect themselves, to celebrate their victory, and to give back to the community. Chuck decided to donate the remaining funds from his briefcase used during the deal with Alex Monroe. Instead of keeping the money, he contributed it to charities supporting victims of corporate greed and unethical experiments. It was a gesture that spoke volumes about his character, selfless, compassionate, and unwavering in his commitment to justice. Word of his generosity spread quickly, earning him admiration not just as a fighter, but as a humanitarian. People started referring to him not only as a legend, but also as a symbol of hope. A man who stood tall against injustice and inspired others to do the same. As weeks turned into months, invitations began pouring in from various organizations, and governments asking Chuck to speak at conferences, galas, and ceremonies. At first, he hesitated, unsure if he wanted to step back into the spotlight. But Linda encouraged him, reminding him of the influence he could have on shaping a better future. Reluctantly, Chuck agreed to attend a few events. His speeches were simple yet powerful, focusing on themes of integrity, resilience, and the importance of standing up for what's right. He shared stories from his experiences, not just the recent ones involving Novatech, but also lessons learned throughout his life. Audiences listened intently, hanging on to every word, moved by his sincerity and wisdom. Among those who reached out to thank him was Norris. She sent a short message one evening, simply saying, "Thanks for trusting me. You changed my life." Chuck smiled as he read it, knowing she was out there somewhere continuing her own journey. He hoped she found whatever it was she was searching for. Back on Elysium Prime, where it all began, things were different now. The orbital station underwent significant changes following the scandal, implementing stricter security measures and ethical guidelines. A plaque was placed near the spot where the celestial spark had once been displayed, commemorating the incident and serving as a reminder of the dangers of unchecked ambition. When Chuck and Linda revisited the station months later, they walked hand in hand through its gleaming halls. Everything looked brighter somehow, as if the weight of secrets and lies had lifted along with Novatech's shadow. They paused briefly by the plaque, reading the inscription aloud together. "In memory of those affected by greed and corruption, may we strive for a future built on truth, transparency, and trust." "It's fitting," Linda said quietly, squeezing Chuck's hand. "Yes," Chuck agreed. "It gives people hope." Hope was something they carried with them wherever they went, whether it was helping neighbors rebuild after storms, mentoring young activists fighting for change, or simply sharing laughter over dinner. Chuck and Linda understood the power of small actions. They believed that even the tiniest spark could ignite a fire capable of lighting up the darkest corners of the universe. As they stood on the observation deck of Elysium Prime, gazing at Earth below, Chuck wrapped an arm around Linda's shoulders. The planet glowed softly against the vastness of space, a fragile yet resilient beacon of life. Somewhere amidst its billions of inhabitants were countless stories waiting to unfold, some filled with joy, others with struggle, but each one important in its own way. "What are you thinking?" Linda asked, noticing the distant look in his eyes. "That we're lucky," Chuck replied. "Lucky to have each other, lucky to make a difference, and lucky to see how beautiful this galaxy can be when we take care of it." Linda smiled, resting her head against his chest. "I think we're more than lucky, Chuck, we're blessed." He didn't argue. Instead, he held her closer, savoring the warmth of the moment. Outside, the stars twinkled brightly, infinite and eternal. To Chuck, they represented possibility, the idea that no matter how dark things seemed, light always found a way to shine through. And so, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the sky with colors only dreams could conjure, Chuck and Linda stood united, ready to embrace whatever adventures lay ahead. Their story wasn't over. It never really would be. But for now, they were content to let the universe unfold at its own pace. Because sometimes the greatest victories aren't about winning battles or defeating enemies. Sometimes they're about finding peace, cherishing loved ones, and leaving the world a little better than you found it. For Chuck and Linda, that was enough.